gels when you run?
I have sometimes. I don't
Okay.
use them often. I
Do
know
you-
that you've used them probably more than I have.
Do you use anything during runs?
Water.
What?
Hey everyone, my name's Andrew. Welcome to Tao Talk, and I'm here with Christine today. We're going to be talking about running and how we prepared for a marathon, also what we do for recovery afterwards, and just get into a little bit of fun chats about things that maybe we didn't know that we were going to run into with training for the marathon. So let's go ahead and get started here.
All right.
So folding your towels. I
You
think
go-
it's the same as mine.
Now you go like hamburger, and then you fold it in half
it's a
again.
hamburger.
Well, because like the other way would be long way, so that'd be hot dog.
So I do hamburger and hot dog. And I've never heard that before.
You know, like in arts and crafts, like or art. I don't know. In elementary school, they say fold your paper, hot dog, hamburger.
Huh. So I just do both. And then I just switch off between the two.
Okay.
Well, anyways, earlier today we were all kind of talking about having to go to the restroom in the middle of the marathon or in the middle of a race. And so have you had any like scares or close calls when you're like training or when you were in a race where you had to go to the restroom? You think maybe you weren't going to make it? Or
When I was in a race, no, but training, yes. Do I talk about details?
you gotta tell us. You don't have to say every specific detail.
Well, I was just on a long route. It was probably like, I don't know. I think it was supposed to be definitely more than 6 miles, but probably less than 10. So we were like out running. It was basically the same route that we do for Run Club. And we got to the point where we were too far. We were basically in the middle of two options of where to like stop. And it was either I run to my parents' house or I run back home. So I just ran back home. And then I didn't have to go. It's the nerves.
Oh man. So I've had that happen. I've had two close calls, I feel like. One doing a run with your run club, and I thought I was going to poop my pants, and I was convinced that I was going to poop my pants right there on the side of the road. And luckily it got to a park, and when you're like getting close to a restroom and then your body's like, oh, hey, look, there's a restroom there. And it starts getting like more intense. You can't like hold it.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't even run anymore at this point. Like if I ran, it would just be worse. So I'm like kind of like walking like this the whole time, trying to like make it over to the restroom. Luckily I made it, but the day of the marathon, I was okay. But that was something that I was kind of worried about. I'm like, am I gonna have to go to the restroom? Am I gonna be able to go before the marathon so I can I don't have to worry about it? But I didn't realize how like big of a deal that was gonna be going into it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't until like a few days before that I was like, oh, I might not be able to go to the restroom, or I might be in the middle of the run and then have to make a pit stop somewhere.
So that's why it's super important to kind of train your gut as your marathon training, but also do everything the same. So like for your long runs, you should wake up the same time that you would actually race and have like the same type of food the night before, same type of food in the morning. So it's like kind of routine.
Yeah.
So you don't have that happen, even though it's easier said than done.
So like not having too much fiber or something like that the days before.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Everyone's different, so it really just depends.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So how many marathons have you ran?
I've ran 2 marathons. Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
oh, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say my first one was last year, just about a year ago, and then my second one was a month ago.
And with the training for those two, I know that you kind of designed your own program for this last one.
I did.
So like talk to us about what you did in that training program. Like what were some of the key things that went into tapering, the amount of intensity that you were doing, the days that you decided to run, frequency, all of that stuff. Like what were some of the reasons for designing the program the way that you did? And especially for those folks that maybe they're new to running and they're not sure like where to start. They want to have some type of like program or something to follow. Like maybe touch on those points a little bit.
Yeah. So I actually based my training program off of a book I read. It's called, I forgot what it's called.
Oh no.
It's called Run Fast, Run, what is it called? Run Fast, Run Less? No, Run Less. No, what is it? Run Less, Run Fast? Can we get a fact check?
Are we getting a fact check on that?
Check.
All right, perfect.
Run.
Less, run faster.
Is it
Run
Run
Less, Run
Faster?
Faster.
Wow.
Ah.
Okay.
All right, perfect.
So I based my
Jake's
training.
on it.
I based my training program off of a book called Run Less, Run Faster by
Bill Pierce and Scott Murr.
Bill Pierce and Scott Murr. Anyway,
What did you learn in that book?
Yeah.
so in that book, it's basically, they teach you to run at a faster pace so that you're pushing yourself harder, but you're running less throughout the week compared to other marathon training programs. So you're pushing yourself at a harder intensity or higher intensity, but you have more time to recover. So you're only running 3 times a week.
Okay.
Some people are running 4 to 5 times a week, which if you have the time to do so, then it's okay. And if you also feel good, then it's okay. But so yeah, I used that method to create my program. So I ran basically 3 times a week and then incorporated strength training and made sure I still lifted heavy because that's really important when trying to run fast and making sure you don't get injured.
Yeah.
So my runs consisted of a speed run, a tempo run, which technically is still a speed run, and a long run.
Okay.
I would typically go for like a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and like mix in my workouts where seemed fit. So like I wouldn't do a leg day too soon after a long run or before a speed run because I wouldn't be able to do a speed run.
After a leg day, yeah.
Yeah.
So with your speed runs, what did that usually look like? Are you doing intervals? Are you you mentioned you do tempo running as well, but
Yeah.
like for your speed day, what did those runs typically look like?
So they'd either be an interval run or a fartlek, which do you know what a fartlek is?
Explain the fork leg.
So it's like a Swedish term that literally means speed play. So you're constantly running, but you're, what's so funny?
I think it's a funny word.
It is a funny word.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're constantly running at different speeds and you're either running at a faster speed and then slowing down, but you don't stop. Compared to intervals, like you'd run fast for a certain distance, you would stop, recover, and then run again, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what my speed workouts would look like.
And then how long are you usually doing those for?
So those would be like distance-wise, anywhere between 3 to 5 miles. But also, even though I had these, this schedule, I tried to stay on top of my schedule as best as possible, but sometimes I would run a little less than what I was supposed to do. So it's normal to not be exact with your schedule that you make.
And then for your tempo runs, how did you figure out like the pace to go at for the tempo runs?
I base off my pace for my tempo runs based off the time that I wanted to finish in for my marathon. So in the beginning of the training program, it'd be a little bit slower than my marathon pace, but then later on, it'd be even faster than my marathon pace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then for your long runs, how did you do like 1 more mile each week or? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would increase my mileage about a mile or 2 each week, but then you have to have some like deload weeks too. So sometimes you'd go from like 14 miles back to 10 miles, just to, again, give your body more of a break.
And then for your deloads, when did you incorporate them? Did you do like every 4 weeks or did you do like every other week? Like how did you do that?
I believe towards the last third of the training, it was about every 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
And then bringing the mileage down by like 3-4 miles or like cutting it in half or how?
About 3-4 miles. I think cutting it in half was a little too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what was different about that training program than the one that you did before?
So pretty similar, except this time I based all my runs off of a specific pace that I need to run versus the first time I trained for a marathon, it was really just like making sure I'm able to run because it was my first one anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you still running 3 days a week for that one too? Or were you running more?
I think actually it would be between 2 to 4 times a week.
2 to 4?
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
For the, I guess, day of the marathon, what were you thinking when you started? Were you like super nervous? Were you like, no, I'm ready to go, I'm gonna crush it? Like, how were you feeling like the day of the marathon, both marathons that you ran?
Day of my first marathon, I was so nervous. And that kind of like pushed me to run as much as I can, I guess. I was just nervous because my training was not what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to finish and survive. The second marathon that I did, day of, I was nervous, of course, but I was like ready to go. I was like super excited. I was nervous only because I felt like there's such high expectations to be fast or run a certain time. So then I have that pressure on me to keep going, but yeah.
And then as far as like, we kind of got into it a little bit, talking about diet and like training your gut and stuff like that. What was your diet like throughout your whole training regimen? And were there like a lot of ebbs and flows? Were there times where it was like you weren't eating as much and then times where you're, okay, I'm eating a ton? Like, how did you normally manage that?
I would say I didn't have the perfect diet, and I didn't force myself to eat a certain amount. My body just naturally needed to eat. Like, we were burning so many calories. Like, I needed to eat a lot. I would typically make sure I ate some sort of a carb diet or carb dinner and lunch on this is very specific, on a Thursday night, Friday lunch, and then Thursday dinner, Friday lunch, Friday dinner was always carbs because I didn't want to suffer on my long run on Saturday. So I basically did that for 16 weeks.
Yeah.
The other days, I wasn't as strict on my diet. Just really ate whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what about you?
Honestly, I don't think that I was really getting as many carbs as I should have been getting because I was struggling with trying to manage my like blood sugars too, because I was kind of in a pre-diabetic range at the time. So training for the marathon was tricky for me when it came to my diet because a lot of people are going, well, you probably need a little bit more carbs, but I'm also not wanting to go overboard on carbs because I don't want my blood sugars to get out of control. So I was wearing a glucose monitor pretty regularly to try to figure out, okay, what type of carbs can my body like handle and not spike my blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very interesting. It was a little bit stressful at times because there's certain foods where you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't eat that. But then I'd eat it and then I'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's foods where it's like, oh yeah, you should eat that. And then I would have a spike in my blood sugar and then it would just plummet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go out for a run thinking I have carbs, and then halfway through the run or sometimes a quarter way into the run, my body is like breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have enough carbs right now, or I'm dehydrated, one or the two.
Mm-hmm.
Then I look at my glucose monitor and it's like, yeah, your blood sugars are at 58 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like you probably shouldn't be running,
Uh-huh.
you know? So that was it was definitely tricky trying to find the balance
Mm-hmm.
between like what's gonna put me at an optimal position to run, and then what's going to like be a little bit too much and overboard that now my blood glucose levels are just really high.
Mm-hmm.
So that was definitely interesting for me, and I think something that was a little bit of a struggle.
So did you wear that monitor the entire time you were training?
Not every single day of my training, but what I would do is 14 days on and 14 days off.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I got a little bit closer to the marathon, I stopped using it
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that I was going to be incorporating more carbs than usual.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to stress myself out
Yeah.
knowing like, okay, I'm probably going to be high blood sugar for a little while,
Mm-hmm.
but it's only because I'm going to do the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I'm going to go back to like my regular diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped using it just for maybe that month,
Yeah.
like of October.
Have
leading
you
up.
checked it recently?
Mm-hmm. I do
Okay.
like the finger prick and stuff
Okay.
like that. So like, yeah, I'm back
Yeah.
to like a normal level now.
So you
But-
know what's funny? So I got my blood work done after the marathon, and my blood glucose, my A1C, was pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's so weird. So I'm actually wearing one right now.
Oh,
Like,
you are?
glucose monitor.
Oh,
But then I'm like
okay.
hypoglycemic when I'm just living.
Well, that's the thing too, is I didn't realize how often my blood sugars were really low.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go and try to do a run and wonder why I wasn't performing well.
Mhm.
And then I'd do a run on another day and I'd be crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something that I think it was good for me to have it. It was a little bit of a stressor sometimes,
Mhm.
but I'm glad that I was tracking it,
Mm-hmm.
because then I would know like, hey, no, you do need to eat more.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do actually need more sugar.
Yeah.
Like have more. You're burning so much.
Uh-huh.
And so I think that it was helpful in that sense.
Yeah.
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 Which
It's actually,
glucose monitor are you using? Do you
I
know
don't-
the brand or
it's
like which
like
one it
the
is? Is it the
Dexcom.
Dexcom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you use?
I was using the Freestyle Libre one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't used the Dexcom before. I heard
Mhm.
that one's pretty good though.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
How long
far,
have
so
you had
good.
it?
This is only day 2, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually curious. I'm going to run 8 miles on Saturday and see if it beeps at me or not.
Yeah, mine used to go crazy.
Uh-huh.
It would just be beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
beep, beep, just beeping really loud. And I'm like, it's really loud.
Yeah.
So people kind of just look like, what is going on?
Uh-huh.
Like, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But there's certain foods like bananas. I couldn't have a banana because it would just spike me and then I would just plummet down
Mhm.
and have like no carbs pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So bananas, I think potatoes sometimes would do that. Not always, but sometimes they would. Things like cookies and like stuff like that you would think would just like spike you, and I never really had a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't eat them very often, but if I was like, oh, I want to have like a cookie or like I want to have a pastry or something like that, then it was usually okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was like certain things where you like wouldn't think of, like certain like fruits, sometimes certain veggies, that would do that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine if you're like running multiple marathons throughout the year, then you're just going to constantly be like at high blood glucose level,
Yeah.
which is probably not good.
Yeah.
Well, which isn't
you're-
good.
And it's, I guess if you're using it a lot too, like if you're running a lot, then I always wonder like, okay, are you gonna lean a little bit more onto the higher side because of the fact that your body does need it because of how much activity you're doing? And then does that mean that if you already know like, hey, my A1C is a little bit higher because maybe my body's not breaking down the sugars as well as it's supposed to, does that mean for me wanting to train for runs, do I have to, instead of doing training for 2 or 3 in a year, do I have to take some time off and really only train for 1 just so then I don't put my body under that amount of strain? So those are all like questions that I kind of ask myself sometimes. So like next year I'm doing mostly halves.
Okay.
Because I know I don't have to go too crazy on my diet to be able to do that. But for fulls, I do like start thinking, okay, let me get a glucose monitor on when I do my training. Let me figure out what the proper diet's gonna be for me. Carb loading, I know that instead of carb loading, I know sometimes people start like the week of they start carb loading. For me, it was like 2-3 days before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because they don't want you to like go too much with the carbs if your body already has a tough time breaking down those sugars.
True, yeah.
So I didn't start really loading up until like our race was on Sunday. I started Thursday night, Friday.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you maybe could have used more, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's why you can use a blood glucose monitor kind of like to your advantage to like make sure you have enough carbs and sugar in you. It's kind of cool. It's kind of like a little science experiment on yourself.
Yeah, it'll help a little bit. Now, the only thing is, for me at least, my experience was maybe before the run I'd be fine, but then once I got into the run and I'm using all of it, all of the sugars, and it plummets down, then it's kind of like, well, I wasn't expecting that. My sugars were at a good point, like at a good level before I started this run.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But then that's when you take gels. Do you use gels when you run?
I have sometimes. I don't
Okay.
use them often. I know that you've used them probably more than I have.
Do you use anything during runs?
Water.
What?
I'll do like electrolytes sometimes in my water. I'll
Yeah.
take gels if I'm doing like more than 13 miles, then I would probably take gels with me. But if it's like 10, 11, then I usually don't take them. Unless I know like I'm really like in a caloric deficit and this is part of my training regimen and I just need to do it today, then I'll take a gel for something that's like a little bit lower. But usually it would have to be over 10 or 12 miles before I feel like I really need to take them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are gels?
Yes. What are gels?
The gels are pretty much like a fast-acting carbohydrate that you can use in order to keep your body moving or like going at like a high rate. So like you have like the sugars available to you right away. And so some people will take gels depending on how long they're running, or I think some people have a preference. Gels sometimes don't sit well with everyone's stomach, but I've seen some folks maybe every 3 to 4 miles taking them. Sometimes they wait a little bit longer to take them. I don't know how many did you take during the marathon?
I probably took like 8 or 9.
8 or 9 of them. So
and it was hard to.
Every few miles.
Yeah.
3-4 miles.
I think I started with 4 and then I tried to do every 3 to 4 miles, but then you start to get a little confused. Like you don't know what mile you're on. You don't know what gel you're supposed to take.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, like your body just like doesn't want it anymore. But then again, maybe my sugar was high enough I didn't need it. I don't know.
Now you have the glucose monitor. So
now I can figure it out.
You'll know now.
No, but so they recommend a specific amount of grams of carbs or sugar every 30 to 40 minutes of exercise, depending on your body weight. So if you kind of beat the time of when your sugar is depleted, then your run's going to feel a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something that I probably could do a little bit more of when next time I have a monitor on. But honestly, when I've noticed it, it's not even been on long runs. It would be, I'll be on a short run 2 miles in, and then it's already like, I'm already in a really low glycemic state. So then I'm going, okay, well, I ate before this. I'm hydrated. That's another thing too I've noticed is I can tell when my body is not hydrated versus when it's carbs. I feel like I can tell the difference.
I don't know if I could tell the difference.
The only reason why is because I've had the glucose monitor on when my carbs have been really low or when my sugar's been really low. So I kind of know that feeling. For me, it's like I feel like a little more exhausted, like I don't have energy, like I don't want to run. Whereas when I'm dehydrated, my muscles are really sore, achy, feel like they want to cramp up. That's just me. But that's what I've noticed when I'm dehydrated is I feel like my calves start to hurt, things like that.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
When I'm low on, like my hamstring will start to hurt. Like, yeah, I'm dehydrated. Carbs, it's, I cannot keep doing this. Like I need to stop and walk. My legs don't really hurt, but I don't have the energy to keep going.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I know those two different feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting too, because I didn't know that until after I started doing the marathon training. You like start learning these things about your body, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like you'll know like, okay, I do need more water or, oh, I do need more carbs. Maybe I can take a gel to kind of help supplement this and I can push through, or no, you need to really drink water and it gets really hot out here. We're training in the summer. You might need to shut it down today. Like you're not doing 12 miles today if you feel like you're dehydrated at mile 6, you know?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting too, just learning those things about my body, having the glucose monitor on, learning more about like what that may feel like. So now I kind of know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from your marathons that you're taking with you on the next one?
Oh, I don't know. I learned so much.
First thing that comes to mind. What's one thing you learned?
First thing that comes to mind is how important being consistent is with running. Like for my first, well, here's the thing. Okay, my first and my second marathons were so different from one another. First marathon, I couldn't finish my training program because I was dealing with health issues. So with the consistency, obviously I had like big gaps of not being able to run, and you could feel it when you take those gaps. So that's why consistency is really important versus like my second marathon. I was able to basically complete the entire training programs, which made things a lot easier. Another big thing that I learned with, I guess it kind of makes, to me it makes sense, maybe not for everyone, but weather plays a big role in how you'll perform. So like my first marathon was in Honolulu, Hawaii. 80 degrees, humid. Yeah, 80 degrees humid, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Vegas was like, I don't even know, 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice.
There was like wind, but like good wind, like to help cool you down. You run so much faster when it's colder. And at first it's a little brutal, but so weather makes a big difference. Typically you're gonna run slower when it's hotter because your body's working harder to cool or keep yourself cool. So in the future, for myself, I actually would pick a marathon in the spring or the fall, not the summer, that's for sure. But also, depending on where it is, that's like I'm either going to run a marathon and race it if it's a good weather and location, but if it's like a hotter location, like I would do the Honolulu again, I would do that for fun.
Yeah.
I don't expect to,
you're
PR
not
or anything.
on that one.
Yeah, no, that one's for fun.
I thought the one here was pretty cool because it was like mostly downhill. And then when you get to flat ground, it just felt like, oh God, like, am I on a hill right now? Because you're like used to going down the whole time.
Yeah.
So that, I think the course too, like you were saying, the weather, the course, like how many hills are there? Is it downhill? Is it uphill? Is there even any hills at all? And that definitely plays a role in the training, I think, too. But I think for me, this last one that we did, the biggest thing I learned is that I don't have to be pushing myself as hard as I can, like every time I go out and run. You know, like I can have days where it's like, you're gonna go a little bit slower today, and that's fine. But I think that at the beginning, I was just like, each time I ran, it's just boom, like as fast as I can. Like just push as hard as I can, like every single time. And then I finally started to kind of slow down a little bit and go, you know, I'm not gonna make it through my training if I do this every time. I'm probably gonna hurt myself, one. And so just knowing like it's important having those days where it's like, it's supposed to be an easy run today. Make it an easy run. Don't do the easy run and it's like, this is easy, I feel good, I'm gonna bolt it the last like few miles. It's like, like let your body have those days to like recover, like give it a chance to do that. So that was probably one of the big takeaways that I had, and especially after doing my 20-mile run, humbled me a lot because I did choose a route that was very hard, not necessarily on purpose. I just didn't think about it. It was all uphill, and it was the slowest run that I've done like throughout all of my training. And afterwards, I was just happy that I finished it. But I remember like thinking to myself, wow, like I was pretty slow today. Am I gonna be able to even do the marathon? Like, am I gonna complete it? And I started thinking about the route. I'm like, that was all uphill. It's like, that was probably the hardest run I've ever done.
I think
that was harder than the marathon for me.
Yeah, my 20-miler was tough,
Yeah.
but I purposely picked a tough one.
See, I didn't purposely pick one. I remember you telling me you were gonna pick a tough one, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna run with her for that.
I sent it to you. Did you do that route?
No, I didn't. I was like, I don't want to do a hard route. And then it ended up being hard anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was just, it kind of humbled me a little bit, but it also made me kind of realize this is why you do this is why you do the training to begin with. It's not because you're going to be crushing it every single time you do a run. Like every single run's not going to be faster. It's not going to be better each time. Like there's going to be times where you're like, you got to slow down, or you're hurt, or you didn't have enough carbs that day, or you're dehydrated, because we're human and we work and we have life, you know? So I guess just like giving yourself a little bit of grace.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah. Not every run is perfect. Definitely. Also, for myself, and then I tell a lot of, I guess, clients that I help train, is like, you just have to trust the process. Like, not every run is perfect, but everything that you do in training is going to help you with that race that you're about to run. And don't change anything last minute. Just, again, trust the process and go for it.
Stick to it.
Yeah, stick to the plan.
So you mentioned keeping up with like heavy lifting earlier. And so I know this is something that like other runners that I've talked to, they're just, I'm supposed to go weight train, but you know, I don't know, I didn't get to it, and then I got to run more today, or like I did a little bit of resistance training, but then they're doing like really, 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 really light loads, and then not really challenging muscles appropriately. Can you speak on like the importance of resistance training, and then also talk about like how you did a lot of heavier lifting and maybe when you started tapering down some of that?
So yeah, resistance training is very important for all runners, to one, prevent injury, and also two, to become a stronger runner and like as in being able to run long distances. And also, if you want to be a faster runner, your muscles need to be strong enough to be able to propel yourself that fast.
Yeah.
Because your body's taking on so much load when you're running. Your muscles need to be strong enough to, do all that. So that's really the importance of it.
Yeah.
What was the second part you asked?
When did you start tapering down your resistance training?
So, like, you want to prevent injury, right? So I actually got injured towards the end of my training.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but here's a good thing. Because I was strength training leading up to it, I was able to take, maybe a week off of heavier lifting and a little bit off of running, but I was still able to jump back into running because I was previously heavy lifting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I did start to taper down basically 3 weeks leading up to the race.
Okay.
I would still lift what I can, but not to the point where I know I was going to be sore for 2 days, because sometimes that would happen. I try to minimize my soreness. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I think, kind of around what I did too. There are certain movements that I started to take out leading up to the race. So like I was doing pretty heavy back squats still for a while. And then as we got a little bit closer, I started switching those out for like reverse lunges, or doing like not the Smith machine, but maybe like a hack squat or something like that, and slowly decreasing that. Deadlifting, hip hinging, those types of movements, I kept those heavy a little bit longer. But then, as kind of similar to you, about maybe 3 weeks out or so is when I started to really like try to decrease the amount of like volume and intensity that I was doing in the weight room. But I didn't stop going. Like I was still going in, still going through some of the movements, still trying to load my body a little bit. And especially, I think the biggest thing for me was hamstrings and calves. Like they needed to be strong.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, there's a lot of the smaller muscles that I just ignore when lifting that I definitely should have worked on, like your lower leg muscles. I'm pretty sure it was probably my posterior tib tendon. It was definitely inflamed after the marathon.
Yeah.
I think I was out for a good 10 days. Like I was limping walking. Didn't even want to try running. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
But I could have maybe done a little bit of exercising for the lower leg muscles here and there throughout training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely would. Calf raises, soleus raises, for sure, were like my best friends for a while. And then a lot of eccentric hamstring work, needling.
Yes.
Needling.
Yeah.
That, even though I didn't like it, but it helped.
It does. It really does
definitely
help.
helped.
Yeah.
After your runs, what are some things that you liked to do for recovery, or like your go-to recovery things that you would use, or modalities that you would use, if any?
My go-to would be compression boots, which that was new. Yes, that was new to me, this training block versus my first marathon, mainly because I didn't have access to any. But yeah, it feels really good after a long run, after lifting some heavy legs.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Those compression boots were like my best friend.
Can we get sponsored?
Yeah. I thought that they like
I would like some compression boots.
They worked really. I'm not gonna lie. At first, I was kind of like, it's probably compression, whatever. But when I actually started using them to recover from runs, I was going, oh my goodness, like this really like helps me recover faster. And my training program, I was doing back-to-back long runs. So my Friday long run, I definitely hit them. So then that way I can do my long run Saturday. And then Saturday, depending on how I felt, I would just, maybe do some gentle stretching, maybe go to the gym, do mobility work, hit the sauna or something like that to help recover, obviously hydrating and everything. But those compression boots were a game changer for me.
I think they were top modality for me.
Yeah.
Like for my first training block, I like to use an ice bath, but it's just a longer setup. It's not as fast as using compression boots and pressing the button. So yeah, that was my go-to.
I did take cold showers. I didn't do cold plunge.
Yeah.
Cold showers felt nice though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try that next time.
Well, because I still haven't even done a cold plunge. I'm just like, I don't know if I can handle that. It's just too cold. I see
Yeah.
other people do it. They like it. I'm like, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do a cold shower. I think that's where my tolerance is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll do the cold plunge. I don't know. But the compression boots,
Yep.
those were my jam.
10 out of 10
Yeah,
recommend.
those were my jam.
Yeah.
I like the compression boots. Any other like recovery like tips that you would give people
Well,
if they don't have access to these things,
Yes.
like recovery boots?
a tip that I recommend for people and myself, because I did not do like good on this at all, what is getting enough sleep. So typically you need at least 7 hours of sleep every night. I was not getting that. So that's something
It's
I'll change
tough.
for next time.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's tough doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep. I think sometimes folks don't know how much water they should be drinking, and especially here when it gets really hot in the summer. That was something that I was just like constantly like, man, I feel like I'm dehydrated. I need to drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. So definitely making sure you're drinking water, making sure you're getting enough sleep. If you have compression boots, try them because they work. I think so, at least. And then, we spoke about like the diet, just making sure like you're not afraid to eat more. Like, don't be afraid to have the carbs. I think sometimes a lot of folks are afraid of it. We kind of talked about for health reasons why we were trying to limit it, but I think some folks are just in general like, oh, I shouldn't have carbs, they're bad for me. Like, oh, I shouldn't be eating them. Like, I should be like not eating any carbs at all. It's like, well, no, like you're gonna need them if you want to perform at an optimal level when it comes to like endurance type stuff, especially. So I think that those things for sure, when you're recovering, make sure that you're replenishing yourself, your electrolytes, water, eating, sleeping, all of that stuff. But yeah, I think that's something that we all can be a little bit better at, I guess. I'm not perfect at it either.
Right.
I'm just like, compression boots and water.
Yeah.
Sleep, it'll happen.
Yeah. I'll sleep later.
Yeah. But no, definitely. Any other like tips or anything that you would want to share with the audience in regards to like running, or things that they can do to like maybe help get them into running? Maybe they've been trying to start up and they're unsure about it, or they're afraid, or they feel like it's not for them. Any tips that you would give people that are just starting up?
For anyone that just wants to start running, just keep in mind, take it easy. I feel like that's the biggest thing. You don't want to start too fast because it's just not as enjoyable if you're not able to handle it. But another thing that's fun is joining run clubs, which is new to, I feel like, a lot of us this year.
Yeah.
Because it's casual, not too much pressure.
Yeah.
Just keep it fun and light.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think having the run club, there's a little bit of like a community around it. It makes it easier for folks that are just getting started. And then I guess the big thing too is just not being afraid about like how fast you're able to do something or how long you're able to run. Like just getting out there and getting started, I would say, is probably a big part of it too. But I know sometimes folks are, I don't know if I want to go to that group. They're all really fast, or I don't know, I'm looking at Instagram and these people are running this pace or doing that. And like, none of that really matters. It just matters about like what you're able to do and getting out there and enjoying yourself. So
where did you guys learn? She just asked you, where did you learn how to run?
Well, and then I said, I didn't.
You're like, I don't
really
know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to run. Well, do you have a background in running?
I don't have a really big background in running. I ran track when I was really young, like elementary school and middle school. And then when I got into high school, my parents were like, you should keep running track. And I was like, but I don't like to run. And it's like, why? You've ran track in, elementary and middle school and stuff. And it's just being rebellious. Like, no, I just don't want to run. I want to play basketball and football. But that was about the extent of my like running. So from like a mechanics point of view, I guess most of the stuff I learned is just in PT school, we learn about running. kinesiology in my undergrad. We took courses about it and learned about it. Studying for the CSCS, there's a lot of chapters in there about like running and programming for runners. So that's where I got most of my knowledge around running.
Mm-hmm.
But I was never a runner myself.
Oh.
So I always felt like disconnected
Uh-huh.
from that group of like clients or people when I would work with them, because it's like on paper, like I kind of understand what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But since I haven't really immersed myself into like endurance training, it kind of seems like I didn't really know how to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So now I guess I understand more since I've actually done these programs, or I've done that kind of training, and I've like ran the miles to like know like, oh, okay, this is what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of the other folks that I worked with are other sports that I may be a little more familiar with, or I've played before.
Mm-hmm.
I've done the weightlifting before, so it's like it's easier for me to relate to that
Mm-hmm.
and to like design the program and to notice like, okay, we need a peak now, or no, we need to deload now.
Mm-hmm.
No, like we need to keep pushing. I can understand like that stuff a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So now from a running point of view, I feel like I have a little bit better of a grasp on it since I like immersed myself into that environment.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But
Yeah.
What about yourself? Where did you get most of your running background from?
Well, I ran track, but I was a sprinter, so none of that really applies to marathon training or like half marathons. The most I would run or like race in was at 200 meters, so way different.
Yeah.
I did that for like 7 years or so, like younger, like middle school, high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I decided to run a marathon, I actually used the Nike Run Club app. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Have you used it?
I haven't used it.
So it's
I have
actually
some
really
friends that use it though.
Yeah, it's actually really good for beginners because you have a coach. Shout out Coach Bennett.
Nice.
He could talk you through all your workouts, and he explains everything, like why you're doing it, the type of run that you're doing. He really explains everything. So that's kind of how I learned a lot about like endurance running.
Yeah.
And then after that and running my first marathon, I just felt like I wanted to learn more about it. So then I actually took courses, like I took a running rehab certification course, and then just like learn more about it, mainly to like help myself, but also help others.
Yeah.
And then from there, just got obsessed with running, started reading more, and then that's how I learned all the stuff that I know.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's also like, there's just so much available out there on like YouTube, social media, if you know like the right places to go. Because there's also a lot of information where it's like, I don't know about that. But there's a lot of good information out there too. So I think if you're like looking for something specific, like we just have so much to be able to like, for me, it was, okay, I want to figure out how to do my tempo run. And there's tons of information on it, tons of people explaining it, like what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And so it can be, I think, a good thing at times, just having all of that information out there. But then it can also be kind of a toss up, because then you got to go, okay, well, which out of this information, which is the credible one, or what's actually going to be helpful. But there's just so much out there. And I think even this past year, it seems like running is just, at least for me, it seems like I see it everywhere. Like a lot of my friends are doing run clubs, a lot of people are doing it. So it seems like it's just becoming like a little bit bigger. So that's also a good thing, because now there's more people that are sharing that information or sharing that knowledge,
Yeah.
Whereas before, I don't know if it was being shared as often.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for folks that are beginning, you mentioned the Nike app. That's a good app for beginners.
Yeah, it
Any
is.
other like apps or like people that maybe you follow on social media that give pretty good advice?
I don't know their names exactly, but there's a lot of good runners online that you could follow.
Yeah.
I wish I remember their names.
You're one of them. You can follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At DPT Christine.
Yep, there you go, right there. All right, everybody, that's a wrap here at Tau Talk today. I hope that you enjoyed this nice conversation about running and recovery. And if you have any other questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media platforms or send us an email at the link below.